Data released by the National Health Mission has highlighted that the COVID pandemic and the subsequent lockdown resulted in large-scale disruption of routine health services in April, May and June. The National Health Mission report has collated data from over 2 lakh health facilities across all districts. These include some private centres as well. Now sample this. The total number of child immunization sessions saw a decline of 64% between January and April. 6 lakh newborn babies have missed their first dose of oral polio vaccine. Nearly 1 million children did not receive their BCG vaccination during the same period. The BCG is a vaccine primarily used against tuberculosis. TB diagnosis and treatment is also impacted, and this is why the situation is alarming. According to a study helmed by the Stop TB Partnership, the disruption in health services caused by the pandemic could lead to 1.4 million additional TB-related deaths globally in the next 5 years. India, which accounts for 27% of world's TB cases, could see over 40,000 TB-related deaths in the next 5 years. On immunization, there has, however, been a pickup in most child immunization programs between April and June. Not just child immunization programs, but the pandemic situation has severely hit treatment for critical ailments as well. Outpatient services for ailments like oncology, acute heart diseases saw a 76% drop in April compared to January. So in this light of all of this, should the government not prioritize restoration of regular healthcare services, and should we look at involving the private sector more actively when it came to, let's say, programs like child immunization programs? Joining me now to take this discussion forward is Dr. Sarojini N, a public health practitioner. She's also the co-founder of Sama Resource Group. She's currently part of the expert committee of the National Human Rights Commission looking into the impact of the COVID-19. Her group had also filed a petition against denial of health services to pregnant women in the month of April. Dr. B.S. Ajay Kumar, Chairman and CEO of Healthcare Global Enterprises, also joins us on the program. Dr. Yogesh Jain, the co-founder of Jan Swasthya Sahyog, joins us as well. His organization offers subsidized healthcare services to villages in Chhattisgarh. He has a very good hold over rural healthcare programs and is also part of multiple COVID-related task forces. Gentlemen and Sarojini, thank you so much for joining us here on this program. A very worrying set of data if we look at from immunization to critical services to even emergency services, maternal health, all of that severely impacted because of the COVID-19 lockdown and over-focus on treating and dealing with COVID-19. Sarojini, if I can start by asking you about the experiences that you've had in the initial months of the lockdown. You also have a court case where you had questioned denial of services by hospitals to pregnant women. What is the kind of impact you've seen on maternal health?
Thank you. I just wanted to start from where, you have quoted the HMIS data. And just a few days ago, we read a news item that at least 61 pregnant women and 877 newborns have died in Meghalaya in the last 4 months, that is starting from April, due to lack of medical attention, denials, and because of the diversion of the health machinery to fight COVID-19 pandemic. So it's not just only Meghalaya. We came across many such experiences in northern part of India, particularly in Delhi. Our own analysis of almost 100 cases related to maternal health care denial and deaths from the time of lockdown, they revealed many barriers to access to services. I just wanted to, share the experience because it is very important to know, like this happened in our own capital city. During the lockdown in the month of April, a 25-year-old, 9-month pregnant woman who spent nearly 48 hours trying to access emergency services for pregnancy and delivery. She was denied healthcare by every tertiary public hospital, and where she was actually going for her antenatal services. And then finally, because she came from the zone which has been designated as red zone by the authorities. And though she is not a COVID positive and she was not admitted in any of the hospitals because most of them were designed only designated for COVID-19. And finally, we have to go to the High Court, Delhi High Court, not just for that particular case, but many such instances came in front of us. Right. Many pregnant women could not access the maternal health services, and then there were denial, there was negligence. The judgment was very positive. It stated that the right to reproductive health is a fundamental right, and it listed the directions to ensure access to these services to mitigate these barriers. And it's not just for the maternal health. We have seen with the contraception and abortion too. If you look at the, a study by the IPAS Development Foundation, it says very clearly that, 15.6 million Indian women who seek abortions annually, around 1.85 million women, their abortion access is compromised during the lockdown and due to the pandemic.
Okay.
It applies to the contraception too.
Right, right. So across the board, as far as maternal health is concerned, things were impacted, and this impact we may see in larger number of deliveries in the coming months, so to say, if the abortion programs have also been impacted. Let me bring in Dr. Jain here. Dr. Jain, you bring in a perspective from the large rural landscape of India. You've seen how ground level implementation of programs work. And you're also a pediatrician. From your experience, what sort of an impact do you see of the massive disruption we've seen across all immunization programs? BCG, 1 million children were left out in the month of April, and that has not even picked up to the original levels in the month of June. Similar is the case on oral polio vaccine, measles, rotavirus, pentavalent, you name it, and it has been disrupted. What in your sense is going to be the impact going forward of that?
So, start from where you left about being a worrisome situation. I think the worry was there always, even before this lockdown and the COVID pandemic happened. But the worry has now come true, and I think it's an ongoing battle that we still have to look at. The situation is not going to improve anytime soon. The more
we seem to have lost the audio for Dr. Jain. We'll try connecting with him, but in the meantime,
routine healthcare services, including aviation, have suffered. We know that in the Ebola outbreak that happened, there was a massive disruption of all public health services. And the ones that are, which are something that are important but not so urgent, they are the ones to suffer more. And immunization certainly has the disruption that has happened would lead to certainly a large number of vaccine preventable diseases, whether it is measles or it's a lot of whooping cough that might happen, or resurfacing of older foes like diphtheria, as well as childhood pneumonias that may be prevented by the pentavalent vaccine. We should be prepared now that we would have if not a surge, a larger number of children coming with these illnesses, and already the beleaguered services would be stretched again to their capacities. Tuberculosis, BCG essentially prevents against childhood tuberculosis to some extent. It has little effect on adult tuberculosis, but so be it. Childhood tuberculosis would be, we should expect an increase in the number of people who get, children who get tuberculosis disease. At the same time, I would think if we pull up our put our act together, we can mitigate some of the problems that are happening with the loss of immunization programs.
Dr. Jain, if I can bring in a very brief follow-up question on that. Have you seen on ground the efforts to bring back this immunization schedules back on track? Have you seen that happen on ground? And for some of the immunization and some of the vaccines that have to be given to children in the earlier months of after their birth, can they now be given after a delay of 3-4 months? This is one question that most of our viewers have also asked.
So I would say, compared to the first few weeks of the so-called lockdown 1 and lockdown 2, that resulted in a larger, breakdown of the entire program, there has been some change. But I must say that still the larger focus of all our health programs is still to look at COVID, and all non-COVID care has had a big hit. And I don't think any way close to recovery of these programs has happened in any part of the country, certainly not in central India that I know of. And I expect that if they, the other worrisome thing that has happened is that there is a sort of a system fatigue. These guys have been working, the system people, for the first 3 months as if, this was something that they could have achieved in 18 days, and then it became 3 months. And now, the system is, the people are fatigued, and now when the surge of COVID is happening, they have actually diverted most of their energy still to managing and mitigating COVID related issues. I think still the non-COVID issues, including immunization, haven't recovered to what can be called as acceptable recovery.
Okay. So even now, we've not gone back fully to restarting all the basic and routine health services, and even immunization has not picked up to the earlier original levels. Dr. Ajay Kumar, when you came on our channel in the month of April, end of April, you had made a statement saying that if we don't bring back non-COVID patients to the hospital, we are going to see a huge and a big collateral damage. We are in the month of September, especially as far as critical diseases diagnosis, OPD is concerned. The numbers are very, very dismal, especially till the month of June. What is the situation right now? Have we improved little bit from where we were in the month of April?
You're asking me?
Yes, Dr. Ajay Kumar, yes.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't miss the first part. Yeah, as you have articulated, there has been a expected collateral damage compared to what we saw before March. April was pretty much 50 to 60% down in the footfalls. The most important thing was the cancer patients were coming to even treatment did not come because of logistics issue, because of the fear. And also, the fear was not only among the patients' families, even among doctors, how they were treated in multi-speciality hospitals, care workers. And as we know, the data, there are a lot of healthcare workers even today are suffering from COVID because of the exposure. We ourselves have lost some of our own colleagues actually because of that. So there has been a great disturbance, the collateral damage. And one of the things we are beginning to see now is definitely increase in the footfall. And people who have waited for months are coming. But unfortunate incidents is, I can give you a number of examples where a young lady coming with ovarian cancer and waited in other hospitals, could not admit to the COVID test, finally came and literally died at our doorstep. Because, that is advanced stage she came, people with brain tumors. So the focus is so much on COVID, which is right. We have to have a focus, but the focus is taken away from other diseases like cancer and cardiac. There's been a lot of damage to these patients and community at large. I don't know when the situation will turn to normal. It is hard to predict, particularly when the number of cases are increasing. And I think the fear is less, but one of the things our own workers who've been exposed now who have recovered, in our own center in Bangalore, nearly 100 have recovered. They are now in the front line. We think that is somewhat of a safety net. And we are able to address the patient issues better now. So we have almost reached to the 80% level. Obviously, international footfall is not there. Okay. So we are at about 80% level compared to where we were before March.
Okay. Dr. Ajay Kumar, you mentioned that, patients are coming back with advanced, conditions of their disease because they have delayed their treatment, they have delayed coming to a healthcare facility. Any average indication, any quantitative analysis that you've done that, let's say, X percentage of people are coming with advanced diseases? If you can put a number to it, we'll understand the impact.
From our analysis compared to what was the type, for example, you take breast cancer or ovarian, head and neck, what was the percentage coming in early stage through 1 and now, there has been a 15 to 20% increase in advanced cases now.
Okay.
We're clearly getting that, particularly, we are seeing it in tier 2 because HCG is spread all over the country. In 25 centers, we are seeing it not only in big cities, but tier 2, tier 3 cities. But one of the positive things now is because of the accessibility being more in tier 2, for example, in Vijayawada, Angol, or Vizag, or Nasik, we are seeing more patients going there now rather than going to big cities because of the travel and other issues related. So what is happening is there is a demographic change where people who used to go to big cities, maybe Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad for treatment, are coming to the nearest centers in the last month and accessing those centers. So we are seeing that capacity almost at 90-95%,
Right.
but the capacity in the bigger cities are less. This is the change which we think. I don't know whether it will be on a sustainable basis or it is just during the COVID period.
Right. Right. So certainly larger number of patients are coming back with advanced disease conditions, but smaller towns are seeing a lot of footfalls, is what Dr. Ajay Kumar tells us. Gentlemen and Sarojini, just hold your thought there. We'll take a very short break and come back on the other side to take your recommendations on how to undo some of the damage that has been done. The big collateral damage that COVID-19 pandemic has brought has been on the routine health services, and we've seen across the board, across various basic health services being disrupted based on the data that the National Health Mission has put out. And we have Sarojini, Dr. Jain and Dr. Ajay Kumar discussing what can be the way forward. But before I take a view on the recommendations, Dr. Jain, if you can just briefly explain to us, has there been an impact on the TB diagnosis and treatment side, and are you seeing patients come back with advanced state of their disease, like what Dr. Ajay Kumar was pointing out for cancer patients?
Most certainly. We see about in our rural hospital, 500 new patients every year. Otherwise, that's been a constant number for the last 10 years that I can talk about. And in the months that have followed the declaration of the lockdown, number one, we have had the numbers of new patients reaching the hospital and getting diagnosed to less than half, 45% in fact, in each month. And this trend continues even till date. Besides this, the number of people who have to return for their refills of medicines have also dropped by the same magnitude. So it's again 40 to 50% again that the people are able to reach. And for that, we have had to work hard to ensure that the drugs reach them if those patients were not able to reach the hospital. And sometimes that is challenging for a clinic to make drugs reach a person 50 kilometers or 100 kilometers away. At the same time, those who have been coming in, these 45% who have been coming to our hospitals to get diagnosed, they come with much worse situations of the TB disease, as evidenced by a larger print on their chest X-rays of the lung infection, as well as the consumption, as tuberculosis is often called, in terms of their body weights being much lower than what we have otherwise been seeing.
Right.
So previously, average weight would be about 40 kilos for a man coming with tuberculosis, and about 35 to 34 kilos for a adult woman with tuberculosis. This has gone by another 2 or 3 kilos lower. That's very pitiful.
Right. In your assessment, would bi-directional testing that the government has now announced for tuberculosis and COVID-19, and including other testing also, let's say for HIV or malaria, along with COVID, could that be one of the solutions going forward to kind of bring all those who've been left out of the healthcare net back into it?
Oh, surely, but that's only one of the tech fixes that can be done. I think first we have to allow public transport to happen so that people can access the health services, as well as get the human resources that have been diverted towards COVID care to be back in their own programs. And certainly you can have this thing that will certainly help when you are looking at cough, people presenting with cough and fever, that if there is a shorter cough, then they get investigated for COVID. And if it's long duration of fever and cough, they get investigated for tuberculosis.
Right.
That makes sense, certainly.
Okay. Sarojini, come in here. You are currently on the expert committee of the NHRC. You're looking at the impact that COVID-19 has had across the board on health services, and you're also drafting recommendations. What, in your sense, needs to be done front up in the short term to undo some of the damage?
Yeah, certainly, I do agree with Dr. Jain. The governments must ensure and plan for continuity of essential healthcare services for non-COVID patients. along with ensuring adequate capacity and services for COVID-19 patients in public hospitals. And we need to have various strategies to augment the health workforce, their availability that has to be adopted to ensure that adequate availability of care for non-COVID patients should be available. The most important thing here is we may have guidance documents which may be very comprehensive. For example, we have RMNCH, A plus nutrition, if I take the maternal health, but it elaborates everything and very, very, comprehensive. And but where is the implementation? And we still see the number of cases, coming, the denials are happening. So that is something we need to address. Where is the implementation? Whether it is a directives of the court orders or the guidance documents which are already there. I think that monitoring mechanism very, very important for me.
Right.
And to ensure, these will be even not only in the public, even in the private health facilities as all the directions.
Sarojini, you talk of implementation and you talk of, that all health services and all health staff and resources must start focusing back on health services, on non-COVID health services as well. But in a country where we anyways have, very minimal healthcare staff in rural areas, in primary health centers, secondary health centers, community health centers, how would the implementation be? As in, at this point in time, we are seeing a large surge of COVID-19 cases in the rural belt. So what in your assessment could be the way forward there?
See, it's certainly, it's not the situation right now. It is always there, the inadequacy in the public health structure or the financial, the budget cuts in the healthcare. That is what our first recommendation is. The GDP on health has to be, from 3 to 5%. And that is something which we have to invest. If you look at the NHM budget is coming down every year, and that itself caters the larger public health system in the country. So that is something which we have to start with. And how do we make sure there are enough finances available? And there is a political will to, build. Now, this is the best example which we have. Very unfortunate, example, the COVID-19. We have to revisit and then strengthen the public health system. That is the only option, and also regulate the private sector. These are the two things. How do we strengthen the public health system? What kind of mechanism should be in place? And how do we regulate the private healthcare system? These should happen simultaneously.
Right. Dr. Ajay Kumar, coming on this, how do you think the private healthcare system can now take on the baggage? In the initial months, we saw the private healthcare was kind of missing. One, either for the fear, two, infections of their healthcare staff, and they had to close down their facilities, and three, also because most of their beds were taken up for COVID-19. But now in this situation, now that governments are slowly releasing the beds that they had taken up for COVID-19 treatment from private healthcare, and more hospitals are opening up, how can private healthcare now take the lead forward in bringing back the health services that have been left out?
No, I think Dr. Sarojini made a very good point. I think there is a lot of learning curve from COVID. And one of the most important things is while we are still learning, COVID is a study in progress. We are still learning a lot. But clearly, we need to bring, based on what happened in the COVID, how actually some of the positive things are actually infection rates, non-COVID infection rates have come down because of the hygiene, mask wearing. So there are some positive things. Our own mortality rate in all our hospitals has dropped by 30%. Because they don't have associated pneumonia and all, more precautions are taken. While this is happening, one of the things we need to really look at economic impact, financial impact to the people, bringing them to poverty level, and the inability to take care of their health because of this. So as we mentioned, our GDP, what we spend for health is very low. So this is a time, we have to push for universal healthcare, not the Ayushman schemes and all. I don't think those are the answers. We have to bring universal healthcare, which we have been talking loudly, but nobody is listening all these years. We have to say rich. Why should a rich man get all the treatments where a poor, because he's in Ayushman, they don't get all the treatment. We should bring uniformity of healthcare, universal healthcare. Everybody should pay into that. Maybe a rich person should pay more, a poor less. So bring about a universal health care whereby everybody is taken care of. When COVID hits, nobody is deprived of the right treatment. I mean, this is the only answer for the long term for India.
Dr. Ajay Kumar, Dr. Ajay Kumar, apologies for interrupting you, but very briefly, I would ask you, you're talking of universal healthcare and you're talking of, expanding the GDP. These are very long-term solutions. In the short term, in the next 6 months, what can the private sector, where can the private sector pitch in? Very briefly, we're running short on time.
The private sector has now opened. There are still restrictions saying that COVID should be 50%, but we are open. Particularly specialized center, they're being given freedom. Fortunately, the government has done that. Now, I think the only thing missing is the logistics, transportation, people able to communicate, trains being there, flights being there so they can access. And it is beginning to happen. I think, as I said before, our rural tier 2, tier 3 centers are getting to 95 to 100%.
Okay.
That is a good start. With this, I think the cancer patients will definitely come in early stage. The fear is becoming less and less as we accept this whole program. So I think it is all positive that way.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Ajay Kumar, Dr. Jain and Sarojini for joining us here to discuss this very important subject of disruption of health services and the collateral damage that COVID-19 has had on other basic routine health services. And the answers are to quickly get back to getting these health services back to the patients, back to those who have been left out of the net. Many thanks for watching this special program. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18.